As Italian soldiers restore the crucifix smashed by Israeli soldiers, why are Republican elites calling Tucker Carlson a Nazi for opposing Trump's war? Speaking of Nazis, what if I told you that the Bush family had financed the rise of Adolf Hitler? By the way, we started opposing Israel's wars back in 2003 when Remnant Columnist Malachi Martin said it was all about the New World Order. Plus, Pope Leo speaks on homosexual blessings. But why is Father Jimmy unhappy about that? Speaking of the devil, do we have an unhealthy obsession with exorcism? And finally, why did this man make rosaries out of breadcrumbs in the Hanoi Hilton? The answer will bring tears to your eyes. Hello again, ladies and gentlemen. I am Michael Matt. This is the Remnant Underground. Well, it's happened again. Despite centuries of war against the Catholic Church, despite modernism, synodality, Pachamama, the ecumenical surrender of Vatican II, despite it all, the Pope in Rome remains really the only serious moral authority that still matters.
Jesus told us, "Blessed are the peacemakers." But woe to those who manipulate religion in the very name of God for their own military, economic, or political gain, dragging that which is sacred into darkness and filth.
Now, the modernist experts of Vatican II, they tell us that Ecumenism threw open windows, did all sorts of great things. In fact, is creating the brotherhood of man even as we speak. If we would just abandon those rigid dogmas, we'd be all set. So the world will be as one, right? But what do we really see with all this ecumenical stuff all these years later? What's been the takeaway, the final takeaway? What do our dialogue partners, for example, what do they think about the ecumenical movement in the Catholic Church? Has it really accomplished anything? Are our Muslim friends, for example, are they getting ready to ditch their dogmas so they can get along with us and sing Kumbaya or whatever they would sing? While Muslims are insisting on Sharia law, and I get why they're insisting on Sharia law, because they feel like in secular societies, which they now find their new homes, they have to set up rules whereby their people can follow their laws. But in any case, while they're insisting on Sharia law, so their people can keep the faith of their fathers, what are Catholics doing?
How beautiful is the body of Christ.
Father Jimmy, by the way, not having a great day. He seems pretty upset over at X because Pope Leo has kind of waffled on doubling down on Pope Francis's gay blessings.
The Holy See has made it clear that we do not agree with the formalized blessing of couples, in this case homosexual couples, as you ask, or couples in irregular situations, beyond what was specifically, if you will, allowed for by Pope Francis in saying all people receive blessings. When a priest gives a blessing at the end of Mass, when the Pope gives a blessing at the end of a large celebration like such we had today, there are blessings of all people. Francis's infamous, famous, well-known expression of tutti, tutti, tutti is an expression of the Church's belief that all are welcome, all are invited. All are invited to follow Jesus, and all are invited to look for conversion in their lives. To go beyond that today, I think that the topic can cause more disunity than unity, and that we should look for ways to build our unity upon Jesus Christ and what Jesus Christ teaches.
But Father Jimmy was obviously a little bit nervous by this because he's supposed to be Leo's supposed to be carbon copying Francis, and so Father Jimmy's at X trying to stay all positive, and he says at least Pope Leo is not abrogating fiducia supplicans. That's a pretty low bar. This will be fun to watch. Poor Jimmy, you know. And meanwhile, we're talking about dialogue partners. Israel is getting ready to host the largest pride party in the history of the Middle East.
LGBTQ 1 Minute News. Let's queer up the worldview. This year, Israel will host the Middle East's largest queer festival, Pride Land at the Dead Sea, from June 1st to June 4th. Organizers plan to transform the Judean desert into a 24/7 Pride City featuring 15 hotels, beach complexes, non-stop parties, and a central performance arena. The event will also include family-friendly activities aiming to attract multi-generational audience.
Family-friendly activities. Isn't that special? What was I saying last week about George Orwell's Black White? Family-friendly gay pride parade festivities. What's wonderful. And then this will be held, by the way, this abomination of desolation will be held at the very place, the Dead Sea, shores of the Dead Sea, where many historians believe God buried Sodom beneath the brine. So, again, how's that ecumenical dialogue with the Zionists working out so far? Meet Rabbi Yehuda Kaplan over here. He is Donald Trump's special envoy to combat anti-Semitism.
That, since I've been in this role, has been really something that I would say I've enjoyed being able to do, is the quiet effectiveness of affecting change with certain governments and certain policies of people who have said, oh, we're not going to do something, but yet with some gentle persuasion or maybe not so gentle persuasion, the power of the American government in representing, the President of the United States, and they realizing that these policies are not acceptable to the American government does have an effect.
Quote, the U.S. government has announced a strict new policy ahead of the 2026 World Cup, stating that individuals with a history of anti-Semitic activity online may be denied entry into the United States. The rabbi made it clear that entry into the U.S. is, according to him, a privilege, not a right. And authorities will actively review social media activity as part of the visa screening process. And you're freaking out about Muslims? The Zionists are going to be checking your passport to see if you can move around. And of course, anti-Semitism, literally meaning criticism of Israel, is criticism of the state of Israel, of Benjamin Netanyahu. So what does that look like in reality if you can't fly here and there? In Germany, what that means when they check your online footprint, digital footprint, is that you may have said at some point, from the river to the sea.
Why?
Say the river sentence, please.
I didn't
Don't say it.
I just say from the river, but not from the river, please.
You said that 2 times. Please stop it. Otherwise, we have to arrest you again.
Okay.
Yeah? Please stop it.
So what shall I say?
Not this sentence.
To the beach.
Don't say that. It's forbidden. The sentence is forbidden. Don't say it
And we
again.
get arrested.
Yeah, I don't want to do it, but it's forbidden in Germany and I have to arrest you.
And it's not just Germany. It's not just the United States. In London, it looks like this.
Is it necessary for social media posts? This is for social media posts?
It's for transport. It's for us. You're going in our van. You're not going. Yeah, you're not going in our police cell van. You're going in. We're trying to do this as humanly.
So, in all seriousness, friends, here's the question: how long before you and I are going to be barred from entering the EU? I've got to go to France in a couple of weeks. I wonder what's going to happen when I enter the EU. You see what I mean? And again, this takes me back to the point of tonight's show. The only monotheistic religion, there are 3 great worlds religion. Well, the only one that's going along with the ecumenical blather, the ecumenical surrender, is the Catholic Church in her human element. That's the only one. Everyone else is still at war with us.
Over 500 in the United States of America that have had some sort of attack on the church, right? Whether it's burning it to the ground, graffiti all over the place, statues destroyed, and many of the statues are beheaded, okay? And those are Catholic churches, not Christian, not because I'm doing some research right now on, now I want to know, and that got me interested, I want to know how many Christian churches have been attacked, because we always hear about, we'll hear about a mosque being attacked.
World news.
And we'll hear about, and we do hear about the synagogues. If a synagogue gets attacked, when a synagogue, there's been synagogue shootings and stuff like that. So we hear about that, but they're not as frequent because there's actually fewer of them. But when you start talking about Catholic churches, and this is just Catholic churches, since 2020, as of last month, just over 500. And it's kind of like, okay, so who's talking about that? Okay, the largest voting bloc in the United States of America are Catholics. And yet, we don't hear about it.
Now, here's something you're not going to hear anywhere else on the internet. I pretty much guarantee it. Now, were it not for the Second Vatican Council and the ecumenical movement and synodality and all of that, there would be no war in Iran right now. I know what you're going to say. That's crazy talk, man. But is it? I mean, look at the war in Iran right now. What is it being fueled? What's the jet fuel of that thing? Everybody knows, right? Zionism, the Zionist heresy, the Christian Zionist heresy specifically. And what does that look like? Well, an Israeli soldier smashing a statue of Jesus Christ with a sledgehammer in Christian southern Lebanon. Why is that? Because, well, as we all know by now, Israel has a right to defend herself. And you know what? Here's something you won't hear either from most Catholic podcasters or whatever. This Israeli guy with the sledgehammer, of course he's doing that. I'm not particularly surprised by that. Because in actuality, this Israeli guy, what he's demonstrating there is that he never drank the Vatican II ecumenical Kool-Aid. Like Ben Shapiro, our conservative hero, this Israeli soldier believes that Jesus Christ was a heretic, was a liar, who claimed to be something he wasn't, namely God.
Jewish point of view, where we don't believe in the divinity of Christ. I think that there you can make an argument that the Gospels, which were written...
He was just a prophet.
Right? No. We don't even believe he was a prophet.
What do you think he was? What do you guys think he was?
What do I think he was historically? I think he was a Jew who tried to lead a revolt against the Romans and got killed for his trouble.
And before you fire up an anti-Semitic hot flash, it's not just the Jews, right? The Protestants took Christ off the cross 500 years ago.
In the Protestant tradition, on the other hand, we find a simple cross, without the body of Jesus on it. First of all, without forgetting of course the cross and the death of Jesus, we emphasize the resurrection of Christ. The empty cross reminds us that Jesus did indeed die, but now he is alive. He is fully resurrected and has conquered evil and death. It is a way of reminding us that God does not call us to sacrifice, but to a full life, in abundance and in joy as promised in the Beatitudes.
Christian Zionism today is the canon, if you will, that broke loose when Protestants declared war on the Catholic Church. It is the loose cannon. It's all over the place. And you've got these idiot neo-trads out there defending Trump and Bibi's war and claiming that the war in Iran is actually a crusade against the infidel. Woo-ha! Just like friggin' Lepanto, eh, Slick? Well, here's the thing, neo-trad fellas. It's not Lepanto for a lot of reasons. I've explained why in the past. But the Pope, specifically, let's go with the engineer, if you will. The Pope who called the Holy League to Lepanto, Don John of Austria to Lepanto. This is the same Pope, Pope St. Pius V, whose mission as a Pope, whose pontificate was dedicated to implementing what? The Council of Trent's major objective. And what was the Council of Trent's main objective? Well, it was to condemn the heresy of Protestantism, and to clarify the doctrines of Catholicism. See, we may think that everybody who says, Lord, Lord, is a Christian, but that's absolutely not the case according to traditional teaching. And Jesus Christ himself said, whoever cries, Lord, Lord, is not necessarily a follower of mine, right? Well, that's what we're seeing right now. And so, for this very same reason, to denounce and to protect against the heresy of Protestantism, Pope Pius V also codified the Latin Mass. We're going to try to connect all these dots tonight because it's not very difficult to do. People say, stay out of politics. Are you kidding me? This whole, what's happening right now is all about the auto-demolition of the Catholic Church, as Pope St. Pius or Paul VI said. So, in codifying the Latin Mass and codifying the traditional rosary, Pope St. Pius V was defending against the heresies of Protestants. In other words, we're going to war right now in the Holy Land because of a bastardized version of Christianity, a heretical version of Christianity that was condemned by the Council of Trent.
Today, Jennifer and I and others had a chance to go see the Western Wall of the Temple Mount, the Western Wall tunnels, so much of the old city. And as you stand there, you can't help but behold the miracle before you. And it got me thinking about another miracle that I hope all of you don't see too far away. Because 1917 was a miracle, 1948 was a miracle, 1967 was a miracle, 2017, the declaration of Jerusalem as the capital was a miracle, and there's no reason why the miracle of the reestablishment of the temple on the Temple Mount is not possible.
So why do we look at these heretics now as our allies, our brothers in the Lord, just doing the Lord's work? And why is Christian Zionism, this crazy loose cannon, why is it so powerful today as to influence geopolitics like it's doing, to bring on World War III, perhaps? Why is that? Well, it's simple. It's because the Second Vatican Council reneged. This is when the church, in her human element, reneged on the religious supremacism codified by Trent. And now it's just gone from the sublime to the ridiculous. I mean, with the post-conciliar Vatican synod babbling like Dr. Seuss on gummies, it's open season on Christianity. I'm going to get into this tonight because this is something we really have to think about when this little time passes. It seems to me that it's at least possible that somebody, somewhere, in very powerful positions, is using the Christian Republicans right now, the Zionists, the Christian Zionists, the Christian pro-lifers, to bring the whole house down, to bring Christianity down, to bring about persecution, not only of the faux Christianity, but also of true Christians, of Catholicism, of Catholics, just like us. So when you're cheerleading this, don't forget what happens post-Trump, once they get rid of all this. Don't forget the revenge that they're going to kick in, because at this point, it's open season on this ludicrous Christianity.
Catholic church bells would be okay, right? Catholic church bells would be okay. But a parade in honor of the Virgin Mary, carrying an image of the Virgin Mary down Main Street, no, right? So
what about the Eucharist? What about the Eucharist? What about a Eucharistic procession?
That's a new one. I would say probably not. It would depend on what was being done around it, how it was being conducted. But basically, public displays of idolatry, what the Protestant foundation of the law would consider to be idolatry, would not be allowed. You wouldn't have a procession of the Virgin Mary.
So you see what I mean? Like, everybody's talking dialogue, right? And getting along and brotherhood of man, but the only ones who are like drinking deeply from the vat of ecumenical synodal Kool-Aid are the Catholics, because they're terrified of their own shadow. They're terrified of the threat of religious supremacism being too rigid, right? So we're selling out. We're hoisting that flag of surrender, right? But these guys aren't. This pastor guy isn't. He's declaring war on us. Don't you get it? The Christian Zionists are declaring war on you. And you're like, oh, they're Christians just like us. We're all on this path together. Really? Do you think that clown sounds like he's on the same path as you, journeying to some destination that you share with him? No, he's trying to make your religion illegal. And he's not convincing anyone to follow Christianity. Here's the reaction on the part of secularists and atheists to this kind of Christianity.
I have to go before I become a real pastor.
Well, you have to follow the teachings of Jesus Christ, probably, if you want to be a real pastor. I mean, you can call yourself whatever the hell you want, Doug. I'm just going to call you Doug. I'm kind of tired of you being called pastor. But
sorry, but I agree. Pastor, I'm just going to call you Doug, because that's all you are, Doug. So put a sock in it, Doug. Friends, these heretics are doing something. I'm really, it's very sweet. It's very precious that so many of us have this gentle little feeling, well, at least they're Christian. But men like St. Thomas More, men like St. John Fisher, they lost their heads trying to save the world from these heretics, from this heresy, right? These people are abusing now, in our time, they're abusing the word of God, which is sacrilege, blasphemy, and they're doing it in the name of Israel's new Messiah, the new Messiah that's coming to Israel, and the man who is his, well, shall we say, John the Baptist.
40 years ago, when Netanyahu was Israel's ambassador to the United Nations, he met Menachem Mendel Schneerson, the leader of the Chabad Lubavitch movement, known simply as the Rebbe. The Rebbe reportedly believed Netanyahu had a mission from God, to prepare Israel for the coming of the Messiah, or in Hebrew, the Moshiach. Over the next decade, the two men developed a close relationship.
Here's the thing. We need to stay together. We can actually win this war. We will win this war if we keep the old faith, but we really are going to need each other over the next, well, who knows how long this is going to go on. The great father, John Perricone, this guy's been around longer than I have, been around for a long time. Old school priest. And he said something this past week on the Matt Fradd show that I've been waiting for a good Catholic priest to say this for years.
So we have to understand that. But Catholics have to have a balanced understanding of the diabolical.
Yes.
And what I am troubled by these days, Matt, is an imbalance. So we have many Catholics today who have become hysterical over the diabolical, thinking that somehow the devil's around every corner. They do things like talk about generational sin, even though our Lord condemned it. And they have a fascination with exorcisms.
Yeah, there's a lot of this online.
Oh, man, this is very dangerous. Before the council, every diocese had their own exorcist. That would be a priest selected by the bishop who was able to exercise the power he had given in ordination, as all of us have, of exorcisms. However, when the church understood that the greatest quality of an exorcist was humility, only because the devil worked on pride. And so therefore it was forbidden for him to identify himself to anyone. So no one ever knew who the exorcist was in the diocese, and he would never divulge himself. Because the moment he did that, he recognized he'd be giving his pride, like, I am the exorcist for the bishop. So sanctification was all important. Now suddenly we have a cottage industry of priests who are boasting about being exorcists. This is very unhealthy because it's going to have Catholics, especially Catholics who are well-meaning and trying to escape the crisis, beginning to think that, oh my goodness, but the devil be there in everything I do? Is he waiting for me here? Is he waiting for me there? Is the sin of my father going to become to me? Because this was never spoken of before the council.
It was never spoken of before the council. Man, is that ever true? I remember that. I didn't know that many exorcists, and that's just the point. We didn't know who they were, you know? And I think it's really important that we keep this in mind, because the traditional Catholic position is not about The Exorcist, the movie, right? It's about what we Catholics can do within the parameters of what we believe, with the grace of the sacraments, with the help of Our Lady, to survive, right? To keep the faith and to survive, which is the objective, and which is the one thing I truly believe the powers of hell are most concerned about. Perseverance, keeping hope alive, keeping the faith, right?
You've got some people who are listening who say the devil doesn't exist. So then when they hear an exorcist like Father Ripperger or somebody lay out, well, look, here's the reality, it's beneficial to them. And then you perhaps have people who've, out of a sort of unhealthy fascination, listen to too much of that stuff. And then, as you say, they need to calm down.
Yes, I find a lot of that.
So that's what the people you're interacting with, you're saying it's more that than the other, at least in Catholic circles.
Yes, the ones I interact with no longer have, I'm not going to spout off the nonsense, but there's no devil. That's the exact opposite. I'm afraid the devil's everywhere, Father. And they're thinking too much about the exorcist. And I admire Father Ripperger so much, but I just think that emphasis of his might not be the best emphasis we need today. Because it will somehow detract from a Catholic's joy. As I'm fighting the devil, again, I have to be joyful because I am armed with grace. I have the intercession of the Mother of God and my guardian angel. So no matter how vicious these temptations are, I conquer them.
Absolutely. So I'm so grateful. Thank you, Father Pericone. Thank you, Matt Brad, for really drawing our attention back to that. An extremely important point. I quite agree. The obsession with exorcism simply must stop. Okay? This is not the Conjuring 3. This is just the real world, right? And the devil's final battle, as we know from Sister Lucia of Fatima, the devil's final battle, the big one, the coup de grace, final battle is over what? It's over marriage and the family, which right now are in the demonic crosshairs, aren't they? They're being destroyed, not by demonic possession per se, but by a slow apostasy. The slow apostasy specifically, as we talked last week, having to do with compromise on a bunch of levels, including on the political level, where we consistently vote lesser of two evils until we begin to fall asleep and lose the faith. Right? I think that's the much bigger concern vis-a-vis the demonic. So we've got to come up with a game plan. And right now, speaking of politics, the game plan involves admitting that something is going really wrong. An alcoholic's first challenge on the road to recovery is what? Is admitting that he has a problem. Well, Houston, we've got a problem.
I mean, you and I and everyone else who supported him, you wrote speeches for him, I campaigned for him. I mean, we're implicated in this for sure.
Yes.
It's not enough to say, well, I changed my mind, or like, oh, this is bad, I'm out. It's like, in very small ways, but in real ways, you and me and millions of people like us are the reason this is happening right now.
Yes.
So I do think it's like a moment to wrestle with our own consciences. We'll be tormented by it for a long time. I will be. And I want to say I'm sorry for misleading people. It was not intentional. That's all I'll say. But anyway.
So I would invite you to think about it. You don't like to hear it. I understand that. But Tucker Carlson campaigned. Now, he wasn't a fan of Donald Trump. He wasn't just a voter of Donald Trump. He was in and out of the White House like a revolving door. He campaigned with Trump personally. He stumped with him, right? He's talking right there to his brother, who was a speechwriter for Trump. Now, when you see men like that who are that intimately connected with the president, who are really running into a conscience qualm, well, we have an obligation, it seems to me, to take it seriously. Like those guys are seeing a lot deeper into what's going on inside that Oval Office than we are, and they're backing away in a hurry, as are a lot of people, right? And the question is why? Why are they doing this? Is it because Tucker Carlson, for example, thinks that Kamala Harris would have been better? Oh, please, Michael Knowles.
This is a definitive declaration from Tucker that Kamala would have been no worse or potentially even better than Trump. This is a definitive declaration. This is a major escalation, not of the podcast wars, but of a shift in allegiance and a shift in perspective at the political level. Now, obviously, I don't agree with Tucker on this point.
Michael, of course you don't agree with Tucker Carlson. I mean, if you did, you'd lose your job, and you know that. Your boss being one of the biggest Zionists of them all. Remember that Rebbe that we just talked about a few moments ago, who thinks Bibi Netanyahu is St. John the Baptist to the real Messiah? Well, here's Ben Shapiro with Donald Trump honoring the Rebbe. So I don't mean to beat up on Michael Knowles, but no, of course he disagrees with Tucker Carlson. Because when you do what Tucker Carlson just did, it's over. I mean, you got to start over somewhere because you're done at your current gig working for Daily Wire if you come out and say that. And I know he's a good guy. I know he's a Latin Mass guy, so you don't have to fill the box with that. I get it. I have no problem with Michael Knowles. In fact, I think I have a lot of admiration for him. But the point remains that the point and purpose of Daily Wire, of his organization, is to protect and maintain the red versus blue status quo. That's it. Same with Turning Point USA. Charlie Kirk moved away from that a little bit, didn't he? And we know what happened to him. You see what's going on here? These are high stakes. And what they're trying to do is, as we talked about last week, and we're going to continue to talk about through the midterms, they're trying to keep us all voting for the lesser of two evils until pretty soon, as I just said, there's really no difference between us and them. He was, oh, that's not true, man. That's okay, fine. The Republicans have tightened up the border. Thank goodness for that. But on all the moral things, right? Divorce, contraception, abortion, right? What's the difference? Gay marriage. What's the difference? They're all doing the same thing. It's the same party. It's the uniparty. And we're like, go Republicans, because you're so much better than why?
I am proud to be gay. I am proud to be a Republican. But most of all, I am proud to be an American.
In what universe are they so much morally superior anymore? And see, this is the problem. But if you call this out, as Tucker just did, or Marjorie Taylor Greene just did, or Charlie Kirk just did, look out. If nothing else, here come the Bible-thumping Gestapo agents.
I certainly can't speak for Tucker, but the things that he has been saying and the things that he has been talking about over the course of the last several months are simply not based in fact. I don't know what the shift brought to him, but the things that he is saying, the type of misinformation that he is putting out on a daily basis are not only wrong, but frankly, they're dangerous. And I hope that he'll have another about shift at some point and start talking with real facts and stop misleading people around the country.
Yeah, so here they go. You thought a couple of years ago that it was going to be the Biden goons and the New World or the Great Reset folks that were going to lock you up. Well, now you got the Bible thumpers who are basically talking the same thing. And also calling us haters, anti-Semites, Nazis.
I actually believe that Mark Levin would like to have me killed. I do believe it. I think he'd be thrilled. He knows what he says about Tucker, about me, about many others is actually endangering. To over and over call somebody a neo-Nazi, to suggest that they want Jews killed because they say things like, young people no longer support Israel. It's so irresponsible. It's lunacy.
There's no better indicator of the uniparty than that. Slamming conservatives as Nazi promoters if you don't go along with the program. That's just what they were doing in Davos, just what they were doing with Joe Biden, the Democrats. Same deal, right? And by the way, when it comes to this Nazi charge, people living in neocon Republican glass houses, maybe they shouldn't throw stones.
The Bush name became synonymous with American presidencies and Texas oil. It belonged to a line of shrewd Connecticut bankers who understood that real power lived not in politics, but in the quiet corridors of Wall Street. The dynasty's true architect was Prescott Sheldon Bush, born May 15, 1895, in Columbus, Ohio, a man whose Yale pedigree and Skull and Bones membership would set the template for generations of Bush men to follow. Prescott became one of 7 directors of a modest-looking bank called Union Banking Corporation. In reality, it was the American banking arm for Fritz Thyssen, the German steel magnate who had bankrolled Adolf Hitler since 1923. Thyssen himself would later write a book with the chilling title, I Paid Hitler, detailing how he funded the Nazi Party's rise to power. On October 20th, 1942, while American soldiers were preparing to fight Nazis in North Africa, federal agents walked into Union Banking Corporation and seized all assets. The seizure order specifically named Prescott Bush as one of the directors whose shares were confiscated as being held for enemy nationals. Yet somehow, this scandal that should have destroyed the Bush family would instead become the foundation of their incredible rise to power.
Absolutely incredible. Now we're looking right into the skull and bones Freemasonic power center of all this, right? And that was all exposed, and it didn't seem to matter ultimately. But Pope Benedict XVI, the guy who brought the Latin Mass back, he was part of the Hitler Youth, man. Didn't you know that? He was part of the Hitler Youth when he was like 10 years old. That was a big problem. We had to get rid of that Pope. Oh yeah, a little too traditional Catholic. Well, he's a Nazi, man. And Tucker Carlson is a Nazi, man. Right, Mark Levin? And meanwhile, as was going on in reality, the Bushmen, linked to the Nazi Party from the start, proceeded to destabilize the entire world and got away with it.
Bush and his inner circle made the case.
Saddam Hussein is a homicidal dictator who is addicted to weapons of mass destruction.
Often word for word.
Simply stated, there is no doubt that Saddam Hussein now has weapons of mass destruction.
There is no doubt that he has used them.
The United States knows that Iraq has weapons of mass destruction.
Absolutely.
We cannot wait for the final proof.
But we don't want the smoking gun to be a mushroom cloud.
It could come in the form of a mushroom cloud.
Intelligence reports, leaked to the press, splashed on the front page.
Some of the most credible, most respected American news organizations, like the New York Times, had written very detailed and, in its own way, supportive coverage of the evidence. Those lies, in effect, were translated through the credibility of news organizations right there into the field of view of Americans.
Yeah, that's the way it was. But you know what? It's cool, man. Because a few years later, W came out and said, sorry about that.
When you found out there were no weapons of mass destruction, can you bring me to that moment? Did someone walk in and say, we've stopped looking, they're not there? Who was it? How did that happen?
It just kind of was, it evolved. The fact that there wasn't weapons evolved. I mean, I was, when we first got in there, started looking around and didn't find anything, you get that kind of sinking feeling that, it's there. And I felt terrible about it. And
okay. He felt terrible about the fact that 1 million people were dead, 500,000 through violent deaths, mostly Iraqi civilians. Just feels awful. Bush feels terrible about that. But the obvious question is, all right, so you feel bad, but did anyone ever have to pay for your war crime?
But the fact of the matter is that we sent young men and women there who were killed, as I know you know better than anybody else, and no one ever... You never said, you're responsible for this, you're out. And so the American people, I think, began to kind of lose confidence in their government.
I can see that. First of all, I was responsible. And the 2004 campaign was partially about that responsibility. But, the commander-in-chief responsible. And, I wish we'd have found weapons of mass destruction.
Way to take one for the tribe there, George. In the pages of this newspaper, as I've explained before, we defied George W. Bush. Defied him. We opposed his little war, Dick Cheney, all those guys, totally opposed them in the pages of the Remnant, lost half of our subscribers, as I have pointed out in the past. And everybody called us anti-Semites and un-American and morons, the same names that they're calling Tucker Carlson right now. But do you understand when you look at a clip like that, when you look at what they did, how they lied to everybody? Do you understand why somebody like Tucker Carlson, who got sucked in back during the Iraq War, who got sucked in at COVID, do you understand why this time he says, you know what? No, we're not doing this again. Because this time, especially with the Iran war, it's particularly stupid. There's not even a coalition of the willing, which should give us all hope. No coalition of the willing to go along with the neocon lies this time. They're telling the Zionists to pound sand. And that's why, by the way, the Christian Zionists are getting particularly nasty.
In the last 24 hours or so, the president posted some comments and images related to the Pope, related to one image it looked like where he was kind of almost like a Jesus figure. I'm wondering if you've seen those and what's your reaction to them?
Well, as to the Pope, the Holy Father's entitled to his opinion, but I don't like what the Pope is saying in this regard. I think the Pope misses the evil nature of the regime. In the 30s, the Catholic Church did not quite get Hitler.
Oh, man. Again, pro-life, conservative, mental midget, degenerate human being telling us that the great Pope Pius XII didn't know what he was doing. Well, here's a note to Lady Lindsay. Even people like Albert Einstein, who lived at the time, would beg to differ with you. Here's what old Albert said, who lived through it, who was Jewish at the time. He said, quote, "When the Nazi Revolution came to Germany, I looked to the universities to defend Germany, but the universities were silenced. Then I looked to the great editors of the newspapers, but they, like the university, were silenced. Only the Catholic Church stood squarely across the path of Hitler's campaign for suppressing the truth. End quote. But what difference does the truth make? What is truth when you got a war to fight, right, Lindsay? But now, says the new recruits, the new Christian pro-lifers over at Fox News, Brian Kilmeade. Oh, he says, he assures his audience that Pope Pius XII, he knew all about 6 million Jews, that they were about to die, but of course, the Catholic Pope did nothing, according to something called Brian Kilmeade, which again is fake news, says Hitler's biographer. What does he know? John Toland says, quote, the church under the Pope's guidance, and they're talking about Pius XII, had already saved the lives of more Jews than all the other churches, religious institutions, and rescue organizations combined, Brian, and was presently hiding thousands of Jews in monasteries, convents, and Vatican City itself, end quote. Now, Bud, I don't expect you to crack a book, of course, but might you possibly consider watching a movie about this? Because there's one called The Scarlet and the Black, which tells the true story of a chap named Monsignor Hugh O'Flaherty, who was right in the thick, in cooperation and with the blessing of Pius XII, in trying to help rescue Jews during World War II.
Today is a very unique and special day. We honour a great Irishman who, in the height of the war in 1942, put his own life at risk to help Jewish people, partisans and flyers who had been shot down. It's extraordinary the number of people he assisted in that dark hour of European history.
Uh-oh, man, the facts, they just keep on getting in the way of the fellas over at Fox. So we better go for the big guns at Fox. We better go after the Pope with our biggest gun of all, the illustrious Catholic, well, not so much anymore, Sean Hannity.
I do want to shift gears with a message to the Vatican tonight, specifically to Pope Leo, who has openly condemned America's war in Iran while seemingly enjoying a public fight with President Trump. Like millions of Americans, I was raised Catholic. I went to Catholic school for 12 years. But as of today, I no longer consider myself a Catholic. And while I am a Christian, I left the Catholic Church in large part because of institutionalized corruption.
Oh my gosh, this guy. Fake news, of course. He's been wrong about everything. It doesn't matter. Because he's always been in Israel's pocket. That's fake news. I mean, we all know the story. In 2020, Hannity divorced his first wife of some 24 years, and he married his Fox News co-host, who'd been married with children since 2012 before her divorce in 2018. So kind of, Sean, buddy, kind of give us a break on that one, Kind of see through that a little bit. So friends, you start getting the idea what's going on here. It doesn't matter what the truth is. We're going to push this agenda, and we are going to use a bastardized form of Christianity to get the job done. Christian Zionists are going to get this job done. They're not our friends. And Nostra Aetate be damned, right? I mean, it's open season on the Catholic Pope so long as he's not in lockstep with the Zionist agenda.
Obviously, the Pope needs to keep his business into leading his flock, so to speak, leading the church, and probably stay out of the political arena. He doesn't need to be getting involved in the political arena. Go lead your church, but stay out of the politics.
And so I would say to our people in our trench, well, let's wait and see. This is interesting. It's worth watching, at least. We don't need to hand the Pope over to the left quite yet when he's saying good things about the biggest issue in the world right now, namely this burgeoning World War III. If Pope Leo is trying to stand against that, we should probably hear him out, don't you think? It's not over until the fat lady sings. And certainly if you're voting for warmongering Christian Zionists, well, you are voting for your own executioners. Congratulations, because they're not going to stop here. They're desperate now. They're the wounded bear. We need to stand up now, and we need to put them all on notice. Not in our name, not on our watch. We are not you. We are not with you. We're Roman Catholics. We're actual, serious pro-lifers. Guess what? We already have a Messiah. So the question is, where do we go from here? What do we do? So pleased last week, so many of you were, the responses that we got from my e-blast, and you're hanging in there and you're ready for this discussion. That's really, really encouraging. There is plenty of reason to be happy. I'm sitting there going through your responses by email, hundreds of them last week, thinking, okay, we're going to be all right. We're going to make it, right? We're in this together. The clans are united. Thank God for that, you know? So what do we do now together? Well, we start by just renewing the commitment, renew the baptismal vows, renounce Satan, right? How about that for a start? 2 weeks ago, I pointed out down here, pointed to these guys, these Iraqi Christian soldiers who raised the cross of Christ in the face of their dialogue partners who had blown their homeland to hell, right? Well, this week, we have Italian Catholic peacemakers over in Lebanon doing the very same thing. Isn't that wonderful? If you're looking for signs, just good little hopeful signs, well, they're all over right now. They're everywhere. And there's the answer right there, friends. Raise the cross. Stay Catholic, even in the prisons that are the New World Order in which we find ourselves incarcerated right now.
Yeah, this is a rosary that was made out of bread. And one of the older guys was a Catholic, and that's what he did. He made rosaries. So we got a piece of bread in the morning to eat for breakfast, and he would take part of that and pull the string from his blanket and make this rosary. And he stole the pen with ink and he colored it. And he would make his, and as new POWs would come in that were Catholic, he would risk his punishment by going over to the cell and throwing it into the window.
And Bill, most importantly, where was this made?
In Hanoi Hilton.
Where you were a prisoner.
Where I was a prisoner.
There it is, friends. That's the Catholic thing. That literally is the thing that's going to save us. It always has. Always has through history. That's it. No matter what happens, they can never take the rosary away from us. They can never take the scapular away from us. And they're having one, pardon me, hell of a time taking all Latin Mass away from us, aren't they? Right? So that's the thing. And if the reign of Antichrist is upon us, well, let him find us on our knees praying rosaries made of breadcrumbs. Isn't that beautiful? Well, let him find us down in the catacombs worshiping God at outlawed Latin masses, shall we? Let him find us in the streets restoring crucifixes smashed by Zionists. Because for us, friends, it truly is the red blood of the Sacred Heart of Jesus that matters most. You know that. And the red hat of the Zionist Republican Party? Forgive me, but to hell with that.